deliberate murder of 4 children cannot be described as protection.
Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
The deliberate murder of 4 children cannot be described as protection. That was the declaration from the police chief, a line drawn out of a crime scene that defies all natural law. But to understand the depth of that statement, you have to pull back the thin veil of a domestic summer vacation and look directly into a plan that was not born of impulse, scheduled, and diabolical logic. It is a case where the maternal instinct was twisted into something monstrous, dressed up in the language of safeguarding, while its only output was the systematic termination of a bloodline.
June 23rd, police in Mechanicville in upstate New York made an absolutely devastating discovery. The bodies of 6 people, 4 of them children, decomposing in an apartment. No one had heard from the family inside for weeks. This prompted a welfare check that quickly turned into a full-blown homicide investigation.
The medical examiner's office has determined that the deaths of Harper, Hudson, Gavin, and Grayson Harmon were homicides, and that the deaths of Amy Steedman and Sarah Myers were suicides. The investigation further determined that Amy Steedman and Sarah Myers conspired in planning and carrying out the murders of the 4 children before taking their own lives.
Mechanicville.
Picture a standard, over-the-counter bottle of sleep aid. You've likely walked past it in a pharmacy aisle, a product designed for rest for peace. Now picture that same bottle being crushed into a powder. Picture it being stirred into a drink, a pink, sweet liquid handed to a child by their own grandmother, not to heal them, but to shut their organs down slowly while the clock on the wall ticked toward a scheduled FaceTime call with their father. That image, the weaponization of a household medicine cabinet, is the central horror of this case.
Police Chief Bill Rabbitt provided an update on the investigation this week, noting that they know more about what may have led up to this awful scenario. This was through forensic findings, reviews of electronic evidence, additional interviews, the collection of records. And the chief clarified during the news conference that the final toxicology reports weren't in yet, but that's not unusual at this stage of the investigation. It can sometimes take weeks, months to receive the results. But he did say that based on the solid evidence that they do have.
Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Evidence Axis, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. The timeline begins not with a scream, but with a bureaucratic exchange on a co-parenting app.
Let's talk about these screenshots for a second, okay? Because they show these interactions starting on May 31st, and it's a different level to the story. So on that day, there were 2 recorded video calls that apparently went unanswered. The third try, he was able to speak with the kids for 13 minutes. Then on June 3rd, they spoke for about 20 minutes. After that conversation, Harmon seemingly sends a message saying, "Here is their flight information for July 1st, flying out with my mom and myself." The next message shows all the flight details leaving from Albany with a couple of layovers. And from there, Harmon says, "I will book the return trip and send you the information after the pickup and a little closer to the departure date, September 1st, 2026, with Harmon's wife returning with me and the kids, as I have posted before." 2 days later, he apparently gets a reply. Quote, "Thank you. We are good for summer. Sometime before July 1st, can we message here about FaceTime and times for summer and birthday calls so I can have it in writing and there is no error? And if you could please put the child support in the account, I can get them some sneakers." Harmon then sent a screenshot of the money withdrawal. I do want to draw your attention, though, to the date that Myers replies. So this is June 5th. And police believe by this point, Myers and her mom were already starting to plan the children's murders. Okay? Now, Randy.
On June 5th, Sarah Myers typed a message to her ex-husband, Brady Harmon, regarding the upcoming summer custody switch. "Thank you, we are good for summer," she wrote. She asked for child support to buy sneakers. The tone was mundane, procedural, almost bored. But the official investigative findings from the Mechanicville Police Department reveal a parallel timeline running out of her phone, a separate chat with her own mother, 64-year-old Amy Steedman. While Harmon was booking flights, these 2 women were laying out the blueprints for a quadruple homicide. They were not reacting to a sudden threat, they were at death around a discount airline itinerary. They planned it for a window between 10:30 a.m. and noon on June 10th, so the children would be finished before a 6:00 p.m. check-in call with their father. That is the precision of a logistics manager, not a protector.
Home. So here's what we learned. June 10th, so almost 2 weeks before they were found. Investigators believe that a mother-daughter duo, we're talking 64-year-old Amy Steedman and 44-year-old Sarah Myers, killed Sarah's 4 children before allegedly taking their own lives. Myers apparently had sole custody of the 4 kids that she shared with her ex-husband, Brady Harmon. We're talking about 13-year-old Harper, 11-year-old Hudson, 10-year-old twins Gavin and Grayson. And according to ABC News, the two women lived in the same apartment building in different units. Harmon lived in Utah, where he'd remarried. He told media outlet News 10 that he hadn't seen his kids in person since the end of 2018, but it was this summer where you had a new court-ordered custody agreement that would mean they were supposed to spend 2 months with him out in Utah. But Myers and Steedman, based on the evidence, apparently believed that the children would somehow be in danger if they went with their father. And the allegation is that they started planning this diabolical solution.
This brings us to a phrase that must anchor our understanding of this evidence: the architecture of the lie.
That the messages between Myers and her mom, so the children's own grandmother, lays out this plot, this sinister plot, allegedly planning to poison the kids.
Those conversations documented discussions regarding obtaining medications, where the murders would occur, how those medications would be administered, how the children would be brought together, what they would be told, and how suspicion could be avoided. In one exchange, Sarah Myers instructed Amy Steedman that the medications should be administered between 10:30 a.m. and noon so they could be finished before a scheduled telephone call at 6 p.m. with the children's father. Late that morning, as the children failed to...
That is the moral refrain here. What makes this case so unnerving is not just the violence, but the premeditated construction of an alternate reality, an architecture of the lie, designed to survive even after the perpetrators planned to be gone. The methodology was deceptively simple, ripped from a search history that should horrify any parent. Police Chief Bill Rabbit Forensic Digital Extraction painted the final moments. The plan was mass poisoning via over-the-counter sleep medication. In a series of text messages, Myers instructed Steedman the precise dosage and timing, but the human body, especially the resilient biology of a child, doesn't always obey a Google search. The children didn't drift off peacefully. They got sick, violently sick. The evidence recovered includes a chilling message from one of the tier-old twins, Grayson, who typed, "Why would you do that? You both won't let me puke," followed by descriptions of searing stomach pain. It is the moment the architecture of the lie opened and the victims realized they were looking at the faces of their killers.
...respond in the manner Steedman and Myers had anticipated. One of the messages stated, quote, "It's not working, we need another option," end quote. Investigators also recovered a message from Grayson that began, quote, "Why would you do that? You both won't let me puke," unquote, before describing increasing pain in her stomach. Later that evening, Amy Steedman sent a final disturbing message stating, "Gracie is aware."
That's right. It seems at one point that one of the youngest children, who I mentioned before, Graceland, was starting to catch on.
When the children failed to succumb to the poisoning on schedule, the plan pivoted from covert homicide to brutal force. It's here that the grandmother's search history converts the crime from delusion to pure barbarism. Detectives found that Amy Steedman had queried search engines with questions that reveal intent with no room for ambiguity. She searched, "Where is the most fatal place to be stabbed?" and find the carotid artery in the neck. When 10-year-old Gavin to fight back, to defend himself against the trap closing in around his siblings, the evidence suggests he was met with a knife. The very instrument that was supposed to be a last resort became the primary ideology that had determined these children were better off dead than with their father. They were terrified, they were betrayed, and they were killed by the architecture of the lie.
That something bad was happening, and it appears her twin Gavin also realized the danger and tried to defend himself. That's when police say either Myers or Steedman, we may never know which, stabbed him multiple times. Electronic records gave investigators insight into what was going through the suspects' minds, too. Steedman's search history reportedly showed not only searches for medication reactions, the effect of insulin on non-diabetics, and the Utah court system, but she also allegedly searched the phrases, "Where is the most fatal place to be stabbed?" and "Find the carotid artery in the neck." This is according to Chief Rabbit. And it all seems to circle back to the idea that the children would be in grave danger if they went to Utah.
And yet, the state maintained a parallel narrative. Steedman left a signed suicide letter. It is a fascinating piece of psychological evidence. It tried to frame this execution as a tragic necessity, a protective measure against alleged abuse in Utah. This is the cognitive dissonance the police chief was fighting against. The letter claims no one would listen. It claims they were saving the children. However, the autopsy reports and the digital forensics don't show a quick, merciful exit. They show a prolonged, painful, and terrifying ordeal where children were messaging about their agony as it happened. The letter is a political manifesto drafted by executioners designed to pollute the historical record. It is the final brick in the architecture of the lie.
In the investigation, we recovered electronic files belonging to Sarah Myers that included images appearing to document injuries to Myers and some of the children, text messages, and handwritten materials alleging abuse.
Now, I want to be clear about something, okay? So Brady Harmon has denied all allegations of abuse in multiple media interviews. Chief Rabbit said they couldn't independently confirm that any of those claims were true. And during the news conference, Chief Rabbit was asked about prior welfare checks at the family's apartment. But it seems that during at least one of those visits, the family was in Steedman's apartment, so it seemed like no one was home.
Officers responded on the 13th. They knocked on F1. We know everybody was in M5 now. We didn't know that at the time. We knocked on F1. We got no response. One of the officers interviewed one of the neighbors. One of the neighbors had said that they had seen Sarah Myers and had seen the children recently and that they appeared in good health. That information was relayed back.
Now, consider the structural failure that allowed 4 children to be pulled out of school, isolated in a small apartment in a tiny city north of Albany, and yet remain invisible to the safety nets that should have caught them. We have to look at the gap between what was officially reported and what was actually known. The ex-husband, Brady Harmon, had been receiving letters from Saratoga County Child Protective Services since 2020, 10 of them, investigating conditions at the home citing inadequate guardianship and educational neglect. The final letter arrived dated June 24, after the bodies were discovered. A welfare check was conducted on June 13, 3 days after the murders. Officers knocked at the wrong apartment door. They got no answer. A neighbor told police they'd seen the children recently and they looked healthy. The officers left. For 12 agonizing days, a father in Utah kept sending texts into the void. Are the kiddos feeling better? While a rotting smell built so intensely in the New York summer heat that a neighbor finally forced the door open. The system knocked on the wrong door while the bodies lay just meters away.
But it seems that during at least one of those visits, the family was in Steedman's apartment, so it seemed like no one was home.
Officers responded on the 13th. They knocked on F1. We know everybody was in M5 now. We didn't know that at the time. We knocked on F1. We got no response. One of the officers interviewed one of the neighbors. One of the neighbors had said that they had seen Sarah Myers and had seen the children recently and that they appeared in good health. That information was relayed back.
Finally.
This brings us to the national consequence angle and the question that transforms this from a local tragedy into a procedural thriller. If a mother and grandmother can send mundane messages about buying sneakers while simultaneously buying the sedatives to end a bloodline, how many other parental stomach bugs are currently hiding in plain sight on a court-ordered messaging app?
Some red flags in a situation like this.
When you see people, there's a term parental alienation that gets overused, and now it's been so overused that judges sort of ignore it. But when you see people really saying, not only is he not a good father, or she's not a good mother, but she shouldn't even be allowed to know the kids. The kids shouldn't even be allowed to know them. And I'm going to do everything I can, including moving to another town, hiding them. When people start breaking the law to make sure the other parent doesn't get to see their children, that's a red flag to me. The tensions, when they're not following court orders. And apparently in this case, Jesse, there was a contempt, or what we call an enforcement hearing, coming up because mom wasn't letting dad see the kids. That alone's not enough. But if it's over and over, moving to other states, doing everything you can, something's wrong. And I don't know how you stop it. And you can't accuse everybody of being falsely accusing the other parent of being a bad parent. But there are flags here. And I wish somebody had taken notice. I'm sure mom and grandma had some mental history, something else that probably tied into this. Who could do something like this without being unstable?
The terrifying answer is that we don't know, because the system relies on the honesty of the hostile parent.
What happened to his kids? And on August 4th, after the Mechanicville police gave their update, he posted screenshots of conversations that he had with Myers, and this is via a co-parenting app. And I want to read a portion of the statement that he included alongside those screenshots. It says, quote, "I've thought about sharing these final communications for a long time. I'm now sharing the messages from May 31st through June 11th because they show what I was being told while I was planning for my children's summer with me. I sent their flight information. I planned activities based on their interests. I requested their medical records, medications, allergies, doctor's information, and other documents that were required under the parenting plan. I believed I was preparing to welcome my children home. I cannot understand how anyone could claim that this was done to save my children from harm. The greatest possible harm was done to them. They were terrified, betrayed, and robbed of their lives by the very people who were supposed to protect them. My children were not pawns to be sacrificed when control was slipping away. They were 4 beautiful human beings with personalities, dreams, fears, laughter, and an entire family waiting to love them. They were denied the opportunity to spend the summer with me, reconnect with their grandparents, sister, relatives, and everyone who had waited so long to hold them again. I believe the truth would have begun coming out once they were safely with me. They would have experienced the loving side of their family they had been separated from and taught to fear. Instead of allowing that relationship to be restored, the people responsible chose to permanently silence 4 children. I will continue speaking their names, telling their story, and fighting for the full truth about what happened to them. Harper, Hudson, Gavin, Grayson, you deserved your summer. You deserved your family. You deserve to grow up. You deserve so much more. Love always, Dad.
On July 1st, the day Harmon was supposed to pick his kids up for a summer of hiking and reconnection, he went to the and recup his children. On July 2nd, according to the Times-Union, he received a box containing their cremated remains. He scattered their ashes on a mountaintop. A summer full of promise was reduced to a particulate dust of what could have been.
In the apartment. And Harmon told News 10 in an interview that he started asking for welfare checks, saying they did check on them several times, couldn't get them to answer the door. And then 2 weeks later, 2 days after Father's Day, I find out my kids are gone. Who could do that to a child, especially your own child or grandchild? It is so sickening to think that they did that. According to reporting from the Times-Union, instead of picking up his children for a fun-filled summer on July 1st, he went to the airport on July 2nd to receive his kids' cremated remains. He and his family scattered their ashes on a mountaintop. This is per the Times-Union. It is just a really heartbreaking scenario, but the messages say a lot.
They were denied not just their lives, but the chance to learn there was a loving family waiting for them who weren't monsters. They died inside the architecture of the lie. We are left with a legal ghost story. The suspects, Amy Steedman and Sarah Myers, took their own lives, rendering the criminal justice system impotent. There will be no trial. There will be no cross-examination of the claimed protection. But the public record remains open for you. The official statements by Chief Bill Rabbit break down the explicit conspiracy and the stabbing. The text messages released by the Greenfather show the mask of normalcy. These are not classified documents, they are public police records and court-approved disclosures. Here is the call to research for the evidence access community. Go look at the comment of the co-parenting app screenshots released by the Harmon family. Read the specific language used by Sarah Myers on June 10th regarding the stomach bug. Then ask yourself and answer the comments below. Was this stomach bug text the spur of the moment cover for a plan gone wrong? Or do you read it as a pre-written script drafted during the planning phase?
Just your reaction so far to what I've gone through.
Unfortunately, I think I'm starting to see how their crazy, warped mind works, right? When they start to realize there's going to be maybe trouble getting the kids back, or maybe they're going to be alone with him, and there are obviously money issues. It's just crazy to me, because the flip side of it, he doesn't see any of this. He's actually talking to his kids. He's interacting. He's doing the logistics. Makes it doubly sad for him that he had no way to understand, predict, expect this. Just all sorts of wrong. But the other side of it is, these are not abnormal texts. I see these kind of texts all day long. People complaining about no FaceTime, complaining about not enough money to buy sneakers for the kids. Oh yeah, well, let me show you how much I bought for them. Or why didn't you use the $2,000 I sent you last month? Did you use that on yourself to go out at night? So we see horrible exchanges like this, and much worse. There's no way he could have foreseen this or prevented it, just based on that.
Now,
I want to read your forensic linguistic analysis.
I do, and the scary thing is that there's so many people out there that have this kind of text messaging, this type of interchange, and would have no reason to believe something horrible. Like he had no reason to think, oh, they can't talk to me, they've got a stomach bug. He answered the right way, right? Okay, well, I hope they feel better soon. I'll talk to him tomorrow. The shock to him, had he had some antenna going up saying, it doesn't sound right, there's something suspicious, but these, to me, sound like very typical parents who are struggling because they don't get along, but they're trying to at least follow the parenting order. The shock to him when it went from, this is a difficult relationship, but at least I'm going to see my kids this summer and I'm going to interact with them and I'm going to have fun times with them, to not only do I not get to see them, I will never see them again. I just can't imagine. It's jumping off a cliff and not landing on the ground, but landing 1,000 feet deeper than the ground. It's just going from a high where you're about to see your kids for a summer, a fun time. We call it, sometimes people get called Disneyland dad because you get them for the fun time, to the exact opposite. Just horrendous situation.
This has been an Evidence Access original analysis. If you believe that truth lives in the documents, not in the press radio, share it, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We don't chase the outrage, we follow the evidence.
The earliest pieces of evidence recovered was a handwritten letter signed with Amy Steedman's name. In that letter, the author accepts responsibility for what occurred and states that they believed killing the children was the only way to keep them safe from alleged abuse in Utah. The author also claims that Sarah Myers had done everything she could and that no one would help her, and acknowledges that the events did not unfold as they planned.
So through surveillance footage and purchase records, officers discovered that Steedman had visited multiple pharmacies in the days leading up to and including June 10th, picking up her own medications, but also buying a lot of over-the-counter sleep medication. Officials believe that these two started planning no later than June. Things like this happen. I want to welcome back family attorney Randy Kessler. Randy, it's good to see you. I wish it was under better circumstances, because this is really the worst outcome in a case like this. You have one parent seemingly deciding that it would be better for a child to be dead than to be with the other parent. Generally speaking, you've seen things like this?
Unfortunately, yes. Sometimes it's I'd rather my spouse be dead than divorce me, but this is, taken 10 times worse. Look, these are the extreme situations. They're not common, obviously. But yes, I see these feelings. I don't see these actions very, very commonly, but I see people saying, I wish they would just all go away, or I'd rather no one have them if he's going to have the kids. Just horrible feelings. I can't believe that people still actually carry out these thoughts. I understand having the thoughts and being angry and saying things out of anger, but acting on this, it's always upsetting.
What would be